Hi, let's talk about AI because this thing has ruined my life. AI has let me build anything I want at lightning fast speed. And why is the curse, you may ask? Because just because I can build something doesn't mean people are going to use it. And this mistake has cost me everything. It's going to be a 10-minute journey, so grab a quick popcorn and let me get you started. I was one of the early adopters of vibe coding, and when I say early, I mean February 2025, when vibe coding just began showing early signs of success. Why, you may ask? Because that is when Claude Sonnet 3.7 was announced, and it was one of the first thinking models ever to be launched. What happened with this model is that it had something called as chain of thought. Before that, every single model just took in a simple prompt and gave a simple answer. But this model generated a chain of thought of its own and thought about its own thought and gave you a more better answer. And if you think about it, that's exactly how the human brain works. So the first time I tried it out, I asked it to build a simple to-do app and it generated it. And I was like slightly surprised because this is still February 2025. Not a lot of apps could have been built in such a short time, and it took me just one single prompt. And then I gave it a slightly more complicated task. I was like, can you make a widget? And then it failed. So models right now are powerful enough to do it, but 1 year back, they were not. This was around the time I was developing a music-based dating app. And me being an iOS engineer, I did not need any help writing iOS level code, but a dating app needs to have a backend, right? And that is when I tried to write my backend for the very first time. Honestly, it was not that simple. You had to guide the model properly. You had to tell it that this is what authentication means. So I had to study 3-4 days before even I could get it to do something very simple. But the point is, I have no experience being a backend engineer. I had no idea how to do auth. But I could write the whole thing down. And this is the biggest problem because it gave me false confidence that this was enough to become a startup founder. Big mistake, big friggin' mistake, because it is not enough, guys. The biggest thing you need, we'll come to it. But before that, you need to know about one mistake I made. I was in Varkla in a beach and suddenly I thought, now that I can write code at lightning fast speed, I should quit my job and I should go build a music-based dating app in full speed. Now, in all honesty, this was a good decision. Why? Because I have always wanted to start up and I really did think music-based dating app could have worked. Now, there are a lot of reasons for why I did think that. That's a whole different conversation. The moment I made that decision, I came back home. I got a Cursor subscription, which is still running Sonnet 3.7 by the way. And 7 non-stop days, I built the whole app. It had chat, it had profiles, you could match with other people. It was basically a complete dating app built in 7 days, right? And you have to know, I still have no idea how backend works. I know the basic concepts, I read about it, but I don't know Golang. I know how authentication systems work now because I spent 2 days reading it. I now have an idea of how image upload works because I spent 2 days reading on it, but I had no idea about how any of the code was written. AI did all of it for me. But the guy in the clouds, aka God, realized my life was too smooth. So he was like, you know what? Let's give him more troubles. You know what happens? Spotify doesn't approve my app. They were like, you can't use the API. You are too small and something like that. So if Spotify doesn't give me permissions, you can't have a music-based dating app without Spotify, dude. See, most people would have quit, but me, I'm not most people. And the next thing I do is that I go to a concert. I had tickets booked. It was one of the best concerts of my life, honestly. This was when a little bit of common sense hit me that nobody wants yet another dating app, right? So another brilliant idea struck. Why don't I just make it friend finding app? If you go in the source code, right, it still says dating preference, but it's a friend finding app. After the concert, I go back to my cousin's house and I was like thinking what to do. And I was like, why not just make it a friend finding app? Not too much thought into it, but I was like, let's just go ahead, right? So I come back to Bangalore. 3 days. It took me 3 days to rewrite a music-based dating app to a friend-finding app with a unique feature called Bubbles. Bubbles! But the thing you need to know, this was still running Sonnet 3.7, which is not a really strong model. But 3 days to build the app, 15 days to polish it, and 15 days to launch it. It was right there on the App Store. And one person downloaded it. One person. You might think, Kritik, You're building a friend finding app. You're surely building it because you have no friends, right? Because if you had friends, more than one person would have downloaded it for sure. And that is when I realized, never trust your freaking friends, guys. I mean, they were there with me, okay? They were supporting my app all the way along. They were helping me test it. But on the day of launch, suddenly somehow everyone got busy. This is when I understand an important thing, which is building is not everything. Execution doesn't end with just the building process. You need to market an app. You could have a crazy product, but does it really matter if nobody is using it? A good product with no marketing is basically just invisible. So I was right that vibe coding is going to change the future of how apps are going to be built, but that doesn't mean vibe coding would change the future of startups, because startups still work on a fundamental principle that marketing and actually selling your product is very important. Now, this is not the first time this mistake has happened to me. Here, I was super early to vibe coding, but I missed a fundamental part that after you vibe code a product, you also need to sell it, right? This very same mistake has happened in my life before, but in a slightly different way. I was right to start making content on YouTube, which by the way happened on a major accident. I actually had an accident. So I was on a scooty, fell down, broke my leg. So I was in a lot of pain. The only thing I could do was go through my own photos and videos, which is when I had a brilliant idea about why not just edit some videos now that I have a lot of free time. This is also around the time I was spam watching Y Combinator content and finally decided that I wanted to start up for real. And I was actually putting in the effort and learning things. Now I did come across this concept that the most important skill for a startup founder is to actually learn how to sell things. So the reason I began to make these YouTube videos is because I realized the hardest product that you can possibly sell is yourself. Your ideas and your thoughts to actually convey to some person is actually a really hard process. So if I learn how to sell, my startup grows. If I learn how to sell, my YouTube grows. I had this realization, and frankly, it was very true. But I was not consistent in making these videos, and that was a huge mistake. Now, of course, posting on YouTube takes a lot of energy. Making videos in general, irrespective of the platform, lets you impact lives in a way which was not possible ever before. And where else do you impact lives? Building a startup, building a product, building something that makes life easier, even if it's only for just one person. In both cases, in vibe coding as well as YouTube, I was super early. Now people are talking about the creator economy, personal branding, founder-led content, and so many things. And I started posting on YouTube in 2023. Which fairly means I was super early to this. But just because I was not consistent, I was not able to capitalize on being early to this field. I do believe that I have what it takes to be an incredible startup founder. But for that, most importantly, I need to learn how to sell things. And if I need to learn how to sell, I need to learn marketing. Or in other words, how do I make sure that the product I build actually reaches people? I don't believe that the growth of my startup or my YouTube will happen in independent directions, because both of them require the same skill. The only way I make a successful revenue generating startup is if I learn how to sell. The same way, the only way I'll have a successful YouTube channel is if I learn how to sell myself and my ideas. Now the other way is of course where you focus only on build something for 4-5 years, and then people suddenly discover you as someone who has built something. But that path of solitude is honestly not for me. I find this route more comforting, where I get to share my ideas and document myself as I go through this journey. So to summarize, I was early to vibe coding, I was early to the content game, but I made few mistakes which made me hard to capitalize on these. Now, yet again, for the third time, I'm early to something. And this is the fitness economy. India has finally started to realize the importance of protein and reducing carbs in the diet, because we are not called diabetes capital of the world for just simple reasons. But this fitness economy is where your fitness actually becomes a social currency. The proof that this is actually happening is because if you see around yourself, the number of marathons, the number of people actually caring about that diet is strongly increasing. And the way that I'm early to this is because I'm training for this event called High Rocks. Although High Rocks has gotten super popular outside India, in India, this is one of their first few events, so every single High Rocks athlete is fairly new to the game. And I feel this is my best opportunity to capitalize on being early to something again. And this time I know being early is not enough. you need distribution. So with all three aspects of my life, fitness, starting up, and YouTube, I'm going to make sure that I'm consistent, I'm going to put in the work, and I'm going to make sure that my distribution this time happens in the way that I want it to. And although I feel that I'm pretty late, I actually am not. I still think there's plenty of time to win in the startup game. I still think there's enough time to win in the YouTube game. But the lesson here is that just because I'm early somewhere doesn't mean that I'm going to win it. What matters is execution. And this time, we're going to execute to perfection and get the distribution necessary. The way that I'm treating this video is like a digital diary of all the things that are happening in my life, just to make sure and just to put out a promise into the world that I'm not going to repeat the same mistakes that I've already done twice. And I'm super thankful that you watched till this point. So if you have not subscribed to my channel yet, please hit the subscribe button and it's going to be a lot fun, I promise. Thanks again for sticking around and I hope to see you again in a different video. Bye bye.